This is Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. The coronavirus pandemic is serious. You cannot keep hope alive if you cannot stay alive. The coronavirus pandemic is serious. Keep worship in place. Keep your family safe. Have a blessed and holy season. Keep hope alive.
Hello, my name is Danny Davis. I'm the United States Congressman for the 7th District of Illinois. And I want to share with you how important the 2020 census is for the state of Illinois. I also want to commend Donald Dew and the Counting on Chicago Coalition with its 30-plus member organizations who are out in the community every day getting the word out about the census. This is an unprecedented number of organizations, and we're just pleased that they are working in our communities all over Chicago. You can complete the census form from the comforts of your home. Counting everybody in Illinois helps to determine the amount of funding Illinois will receive from the federal government to provide assistance for residents when needed, and provide critical services and programs for schools, roads, health care, and more importantly, the census questionnaire is just 9 questions. Fill out the census form online at 2020census.gov or call 1-844-330-2020. Make sure that everyone in your household is counted. Your participation matters the most. Thank you. Be safe and stay healthy.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did and what we did and how global it was. Whether speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
I still have the cough, have the headache, and kind of weak.
For the past 2 weeks, Shelley Mitchell has battled an invisible enemy. It might appear she's losing, but this 67-year-old doesn't rely on what the eyes can see.
So I'm coming back. I'm feeling better.
You hope that, or you know that?
I know that I couldn't walk from my den to my upstairs without being on oxygen. So yes, I'm coming back.
She wasn't able to get a test, but is convinced her body aches and ever-present cough are sure signs of COVID-19.
My husband, he was tested, and then my sister, she's proved positive.
Her husband of 41 years, Tommy, hospitalized in the ICU for days, COVID-19 positive and fighting for his life.
So it was scary. It was scary. I prayed every day for him to come home.
As the coronavirus continues its deadly march, there's a grim reality emerging. Disproportionate toll being paid in Black and brown lives.
Sometimes when you're in the middle of a crisis, like we are now with the coronavirus, it really does have ultimately shine a very bright light on some of the real weaknesses and foibles in our society.
While Black Americans make up just over 13% of the U.S., CDC data shows that they were 33% of the reported coronavirus hospitalizations last month. Among those patients, many who struggle with prior health conditions.
When all this is over, there will still be health disparities, which we really do need to address in the African American community.
Only a few states are tracking the racial breakdown of COVID-19 fatalities. But if history is our teacher, the most vulnerable will continue to bear the brunt of this virus's deadly strike. From Detroit to Milwaukee, New Orleans to Chicago. Detroit, the Motor City, the birthplace of Motown. Once a bastion of manufacturing. A city on its way to a comeback. At least until the coronavirus struck.
Currently in the state of Michigan, we understand that 33% of the COVID cases are African American. 40% of the deaths are African American, but yet African Americans only make up 14% of Michigan's population. So those numbers are striking.
Dr. Kimberly Farrow is the CEO of Central City Integrated Health in Midtown Detroit. Her clinic serves a mostly African American population. Many receive Medicaid, some are uninsured.
Before we were dealing with COVID, we were dealing with the war on obesity and heart disease and hypertension because we recognize that these populations are vulnerable, more vulnerable to these maladies. And when you superimpose COVID onto that, our patients have an increased risk of having poor outcomes, poor health outcomes.
To make things worse, the clinic had to stop seeing most patients in person after running out of PPE. She adds it's hard for her patients to even know if they have the disease.
Testing sites, testing opportunities are very limited in inner city communities. Most of these testing opportunities are in suburban areas. Our patients already struggle with transportation, and so you have to either take a bus, find a ride to these testing areas, or walk, and that's just not realistic for our patients.
Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer announcing today that she's creating a task force to examine the state's racial disparities.
Hey y'all, how y'all doing? Everybody staying safe? Too bad we can't shake hands, but we do it like this.
Right. On the west side of Chicago, Reverend Marshall Hatch now delivering a message of caution.
When do you guys do service?
Nobody can do service now.
Really?
Because of COVID.
Over the decades, these streets have seen more than its fair share of challenges.
We're in a community now that has been disinvested in. We are segregated from opportunity and resource, and then we are become open season when this kind of pandemic sweeps across the country.
Roughly 70% of COVID-19 fatalities in Chicago have been among its Black residents, who make up just 30% of the city's population. The number is so alarming, Mayor Lori Lightfoot announced an outreach plan, including an awareness campaign and wellness checks for the most vulnerable. For Reverend Hatch, the pandemic came through his own doors when, on Sunday, it took the life of his sister.
She was the first in our family to go away to college. She was a public school teacher for 23 years, and she was really the matriarch of our family. My best friend, Larry Harris, passed away as well. He and I were friends for 45 years, and so it's really been a double blow for me personally.
As someone who was also raised in church,
right? Where our folk like to touch and lay hands on each other. And if COVID-19, you can't do that, so how are you supposed to mourn?
This is about as foreign of a feeling as I've ever had. You know, we're used to being able to go in a church, to find hope, and to have that taken away in the midst of this pandemic. It is incredibly, incredibly frustrating and adds to the pain deeply.
In Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the death toll continues to climb. And of those, 66% have been in the African-American community, while blacks only make up more than a third of the city's population.
You cannot get away from the fact that there has been intentionality in ensuring that minorities have been marginalized in this country for years.
Fred Royal is the president of the local NAACP chapter in Milwaukee. He says his brothers and sisters are dying, yet authorities are doing little to help.
None of the resources that they are targeting are being targeted in the central area with the highest rate of incident of COVID-19 is occurring.
How do you explain that?
Systemic racism. We've always talked about, we understand where the need is, but we don't invest the resources there. So what else can you attribute it to?
Our decision to include race and ethnicity as a measure of our COVID incidents was very important. It was rooted to that declaration of racism as a public health issue.
Dr. Jeanette Kowalik is the health commissioner for the city of Milwaukee. She says combating the virus starts with being transparent about who is the victim here.
If the data on race and ethnicity was more available since the beginning of this outbreak nationally, I think that could have helped us provide a more robust campaign.
The virus has taken more than 700 lives in Louisiana, with African Americans accounting for more than 70% of those deaths. In hard-hit New Orleans, the music that once celebrated life and death, now on pause.
The grieving process is on hold and just waiting on the right time to properly grieve.
Elroy James is president of the Zulu Club, a black cultural organization known for its lavish carnival parades. Weeks after Mardi Gras, the pandemic devastated his club.
Many more members were hospitalized on ventilators. We started experiencing deaths within the membership within the last 2 weeks.
Among the lives taken, youth mentor Cornell Charles and Zulu King Larry Hammond.
A great friend of mine and was certainly would be missed.
Founded in 1916 to provide free burials for the black community, the Zulu Club now grieving from a distance.
We're going to have to, again, figure out a way to celebrate the lives of our brothers.
The earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal.
Back in Chicago, words of faith still streaming out through turbulent times. The pews empty to keep the congregation safe. The Reverend offering comfort and hope online.
We're going through this during a Passover season. It was a similar kind of situation where people were told to stay in the house, to shelter in the home until the plague has passed over. But the good news is this too will pass.
As a sister used to say in my childhood church, make it plain, preacher.
The pandemic of 2020 is something we'll always remember. You know, for families like mine, we'll remember the people who were lost. Weeping endures for the night, but joy will come in the morning.
Never lose its power.
For Shelley and Tommy Mitchell, that joy came this morning. So they tell me, word on the street is, there was good news today.
Yes, it was. My husband came home today. I have my partner, I have my husband, I have my lover, and he's home, and he's doing good.
What was that moment like when you got out of the hospital today?
What you think? You know the answer. I got me a hug.
When you were in the hospital, when you were in intensive care, were you scared?
Yeah.
Tonight, together again. Their love enduring, their laughs plentiful. For them, it's as much a remedy as anything they received at the hospital.
We take care of each other. It's back to the old school.
Yes, sir. The young folk will call that ride or die. That's your family.
Well, I don't know what y'all call it, but I know what I call it. I call it love.
Love is a powerful medicine.
Yes, it is. And it can cure a lot of things.
Good afternoon. This is Attorney Robert Patilla. I'm the Executive Director of the Rainbow Push Coalition Peachtree Street Project, Southeast Region in Atlanta, Georgia. I want to give a quick update on the things that are going on with the COVID-19 outbreak nationally, and also on what we can do as a community to try to fight against it. I think one of the big issues that we are dealing with is the fact that so many people do not understand the virus, and for that reason, it's hard for us to convince our communities to properly social distance and take the steps which are necessary to protect and defend the most vulnerable among us from contraction. Also, we have to deal with the issue of misinformation that has been pandemic within our community that has led to the rates of mortality among Black and brown people. Now, if you looked at any of the recent statistics, if you look at Chicago, 70% of the people who have passed away, who have died from this virus, have been African American. If you look at New Orleans and Louisiana, you've seen a similar 70% mortality rate. Even if you look at St. Louis, we've seen a 100% mortality rate being Black and brown people in those areas. So why is it that we are dying at so much of a higher rate than any other group? And I think you can break it down into three factors. There's social, there's economic, and there's systemic. And before we hop on those, I think we have to understand exactly how this virus works and why it is different than other viruses, and kind of chop through a little bit of the malarkey, as some politicians would say out there, that's preventing us from fully understanding it. So the coronavirus, it's part of a class of viruses that are called sudden acute respiratory syndrome viruses. So that's SARS. If you remember 2002 through 2004, that SARS outbreak was part of the same family as this current coronavirus outbreak, but it was a different strain, so it's a cousin of this virus. Similarly, if you remember in 2015, we had a smaller outbreak of Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, which was known as MERS, which ravaged through Saudi Arabia, through the Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Korea. And so these viruses have been around with us for a while. We have never found effective cures for them. We've never found effective treatments for them. The reason for this is if you look at the structure of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, you're looking at a coil of RNA inside of what's called a lipid shell. So lipid meaning fat. So it's just a thin bubble of fat with RNA inside. But what makes this virus different than previous viruses is the corona around, the crown around, which is studded with proteins, which are able to attract to and stick to surfaces. And because of this corona, because of these little sticky tentacles that come out of it, it's able to stay on metals sometimes for up to 17 days, on wood surfaces for up to 48 hours, on styrofoam or cardboard surfaces for up to 24 hours, and plastic sometimes for as much as 72 hours. And because of that, it's able to stick to the bottom of your shoe when going to a house. It's able to be on a grocery bag. It's able to be on any surface that you may touch. As well, because of the lipid nature of it, the RNA can stay alive encased in that little fat shell in the air. So when someone sneezes, these particles float through the air. And if you are nearby and not wearing a mask, not wearing protective gear, you are able to ingest those viruses, and then it rapidly replicates within the mucousy membranes of both the lungs and the upper respiratory tract. And what happens is once it's inside, the interior has a negative acidic charge. So when the lipid shell is punctured, the RNA is able to go into cells in the respiratory system, then go into what's called the lysosomes and start reproducing therein. That reproduction destroys the alveoli, the small air sacs in the lungs, which sends out a signal to the immune system to come fight against this pathogen. The immune system responds in a very heavy-handed fashion due to the nature of your lungs. And therefore you have what's called a cytokine storm, which is a fancy word for inflammation. So you have inflammation, fluid buildup in the lungs, both, and the difference between this particular strain of the SARS-CoV-2 and the previous strains of MERS and SARS earlier is that this attacks both the upper respiratory and lower respiratory systems at the same time. So as the lungs are continuously pumping harder to try to get to try to continue to operate despite the destruction of the alveoli, it causes the lungs to basically wear out, just like any other muscle. Like if you lift too many weights, your arms eventually go out, or if you run for too long, your legs go out. Your lungs go out from trying to pump all of this fluid, which requires you to be put on a ventilator. And this is why when we hear these discussions about getting ventilators to states and to hospitals, why it's so critical, because once those lungs go down, it's impossible for somebody to breathe on their own, and they need a medical grade ventilator in order to do so. And the most insidious part of this disease is the incubation period. Because if it was, let's say, something that turned you into a zombie, and you knew within 5 minutes that the person next to you had it, it's very easy to avoid that. It's very easy to protect yourself against it. But because the RNA is going through the lungs, attacking individual alveoli, slowly breaking down your ability to breathe, what happens is it takes between 5 and 14 days for people to exhibit the first symptoms, depending on their previous health. And because of that, people are able to what's called have asymptomatic spread for up to 2 weeks. So this is where you're walking around with the virus in your system, not knowing that you have it. So you're going about your everyday life, and every time you touch something, you're leaving viruses on that surface. Every time you cough, you're sending viruses into the air. Every time you spit or you sweat or anything on a surface, you are now leaving viruses around you, and it's able to spread person to person. And it's estimated that in the same time that the flu, for example, if somebody has the flu, if they would have infected, let's say, 10 people during a 2-week period that they came in contact, it's estimated that that same person with coronavirus will have infected 120 people. So it's significantly more contagious than the flu. It is significantly more deadly than the flu, if you look at the statistics that are currently in existence. And because of the incubation period and the asymptomatic spread period, it allows you to still be around your friends and your family and your loved ones and your coworkers and the general public, not purposefully, but still spreading this out. And the reason that we see it attacking our community in particular is, as I said, it's a social and economic and a systematic causation. So on the social point, African Americans and brown folks in general live in urban communities. There are not that many of us out in North Dakota or in Wyoming, so on and so forth, where you have hundreds of acres between you and the nearest people. We live in Atlanta, we live in Detroit, and Chicago, New York. We live places where we are in contact with people on a regular basis. And you start to see the reasons that we've had such a high amount and a disproportionate amount of fatalities in our community. Finally, you have the systemic issues surrounding coronavirus, which is, in most African American communities, you do not have access to easily accessible health care. There aren't that many hospitals on the black side of town. You might have an urgent care center. You might be able to go to the drugstore to get some form of treatment, but you're not having that those in-person specialized treatments from doctors in a hospital setting. And also, many times in our community, because healthcare is not a right in our country but a privilege, we don't go to the doctor until things get bad. So even if you think that you may have been exposed to somebody with coronavirus, when someone tells you that going to get a test might cost $1,400 or $2,700 depending on where you're at, many people are not going to do that. And further, the idea of being hospitalized for 14 to 21 days while you're trying to get over this virus, along with being put on potentially a ventilator in order for you to survive, and then getting out and getting hit with a $70,000 or $80,000 hospital bill, as many people have, is a double whammy for our community. So systemically, we don't have the healthcare options, we don't have the access to medical care that other communities have, which drives up our mortality rates when it comes to this virus. But what we have seen in the African American community is that historically we do not want to be the guinea pigs when it comes to finding out whether or not some new and fancy medicine works or doesn't work. What we saw during the Tuskegee experiments and during other dark chapters in American history is the rich and the powerful get one set of medicines, and black and brown people get the experimental medicine where we don't quite know exactly what it will do to the body. And so just a deep dive a little bit into these anti-malarial medications. The way that they are theorized to work is that they turn off the receptors in the from the lysosomes that trigger the cytokine storm. So they prevent inflammation by suppressing the immune system. By suppressing that immune system, it stops that fluid buildup and inflammation in the lungs and gives the body more time to recover from the virus. However, science right now does not know whether or not it's that cytokine storm that kills you, or if the virus itself, left untreated, will simply eat away at the alveoli, therefore collapsing the lungs and causing death. So more testing is needed to determine whether or not these anti-malarial drugs will actually do more harm than they do good. On a second note, part of the reason that we see politicians pushing this idea of a cure is they like certainty. They like to give people hope. And there is a certain acceptable level of fatalities they're willing to accept. And if they can make people believe that there's a magical pill that will treat them, that will make the virus go away, they know they can get people to go back out to work and then accept that acceptable level of fatalities. Remember early on we were talking about between 150 and 250,000 fatalities. Now they're saying if we have under 100,000 fatalities, we've done our job and we can declare this a success. I think that's a very callous way of viewing human life, and in practice, it is really just an effort to convince people to come back out of quarantine and to get back into the economy and to get the market back going. So what should we do? What do we where do we go from here? What we have to do is have continuous vigilance in our community, work with our communities, work with our churches, work with our businesses to ensure that we are fighting this virus with the full weight of medical science behind us, not based on fairy tales or fantasy, not based on concepts which don't have any scientific basis. We have to listen to what the doctors are telling us, because we've seen it work in Taiwan, we've seen it work in South Korea, we've seen it work in Singapore, so it can work in the Black community also, if we understand what is going on and are able to fight against it. I want you and your families to stay safe. And if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to us at the Rainbow Push Coalition. Particularly if you want to email me, it is the letter R, Patillo, RPATILLO at rainbowpush.org.
Good morning. We are in the midst of a major drive to get more members, more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those incarcerated, change the policies that impact students attending colleges and universities, if you want to be a policymaker, then you need to join Rainbow Push, and join by paying your $35 right now. Some of you watch us every week. You listen to us on the radio. You're viewing us in social media. We need you to become a member. It's only $35 a year. If you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, we've awarded more than $10 million to scholars year to date. What do you have to do to give and support Push? It's really very simple. You can go to rainbowpush.org if you're on a computer and press donate. Give any amount. Every dollar is important. You want to talk to somebody, call us at 773-256-2775. You can give right now, any denomination that you choose. You can text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. Text on your cell phone. Most of you have a cell phone. Just text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444, and you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving. Or call us 773-256-2775, or go to rainbowpush.org and just press donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. Our lost the fear of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did and what we did and how global it was. Whether speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, about Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
My name is Allison Felder, and I will be doing an adaptation by T.L. Cherry, Black Girl Pride. Beauty, elegance, style, and grace, that's what you see when you look at our face. Strength, confidence, compassion, and pride, we're just as beautiful on the inside. We're kind and generous when it comes to giving. We know that helping others is the true meaning of living. We committed our lives without a doubt to serving others day in and day out. We carry ourselves with dignity and respect. We fight against injustice, abuse, and neglect. We're always there with an extended hand to help others who can no longer stand. We strive for excellence and won't settle for less. We stay modest and humble despite our success. We're the first of our kind at many things. We're not afraid to spread our wings. We define the rules that others live by. With confidence, we hold our heads high. We have the strength and power to face our fears. We have knowledge and wisdom beyond our years. We prefer to speak softly, but know how to raise our voice. We are not afraid to defend our choice. To underestimate our strength, no, that would be tragic, because nothing compares to Black girl magic. From the confidence in our voice to the dignity in our stride, make no mistake about it, that's Black girl pride.
What is happening in K-12 education during the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic? There is a lot we still don't completely understand about various aspects of this pandemic. What we do have a better handle on, however, is what is happening in K through 12 education as of this time. I would like to make an attempt to talk about this through the lens of America's most vulnerable students and their families. What we already knew is that prior to this outbreak, there were huge disparities in the educational opportunities made available to Black and Brown students when you compare their schooling experiences to that of their peers. In other words, the academic achievement gap already existed, and in this space that we're in right now, relevant to the pandemic outbreak, the gap is widening. This pandemic outbreak has put a spotlight on the inequities that already existed in our system, and some would argue that it has been by design. In 1954, Brown versus Board of Education via the U.S. Supreme Court ruled segregation in schools as being unconstitutional. Now, it's important to pause, if only for just a moment, and recognize the fact that just a year ago marked the 65th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. And as a direct result, educators and researchers and scholars from all over the country came together for the purpose of answering one question. And that question was, how far have we come? And the results are devastating. It's now time to pull the sheets off of the bed of America's very current reality. And that reality is that in 2020, America's schools have resegregated. Now, I just want to pause for a moment and let that resonate in your spirit. Now, don't just take my word for it. According to a comprehensive research report entitled Harming Our Common Future, America's Segregated Schools 65 Years After Brown, Black students now attend schools with a combined Black and Latino enrollment averaging 67%, and Latino students attend schools with a Black and Latino enrollment averaging 66%, and white and Asian students have much lower exposure to combined Black and Latino students at 22% and 34%, respectively. Now is the time to sound the alarm on the fact that low literacy in America is also a silent killer. The reality is that low literacy contributes to homelessness, joblessness, and the mass incarceration of Black and brown people. Low literacy also contributes to the chronic health related issues that the parents of some of our African American students experience. And now we know that coronavirus does not discriminate, but what it does do is disproportionately impact the Black community. And so when one poses the question, what's happening in K-12 education? Because of the inequities that already existed in America's schools, we now have students at home, some of them with adults that are actually sick, like physically ill, and who have lost their jobs. And they're under a tremendous amount of emotional and physical stress. Some of our students are attempting to complete homework assignments when they are experiencing some of the most traumatic moments of their entire life. And so when we see the beautiful commercials of the beautiful people in our beautiful homes with beautiful homework spaces and beautiful children doing beautiful homework, let's not fall asleep at the wheel. Let's remain cognizant of the fact that that is not the current reality for most of the children in America's public schools. And yet, for the high school class of 2020, for those who chose to move on to a career at the end of this school year, and for those who have elected to go on to higher education, they're still required to be prepared to compete for jobs that may or may not even exist. And they are still required to develop the intellectual capacity to meet the criteria for acceptance into colleges of their choice. And yet, far too many of them are attempting to do so in homes that are not adequately equipped to ensure that they are prepared. And then there are the educators. And oh, do I want to thank the educators, for which I am one of them. There are the educators from across the entire country who are now charged with the daunting task of attempting to educate some of America's most vulnerable students remotely, who, along with their students, are then expected to return to business as usual in their segregated schools when the coast is clear. I think we can do better than that. While we all continue to adhere to health related recommendations associated with stopping the spread of this virus, and when our country successfully addresses the current pandemic outbreak, we do not want the lights to go down. We do not want state, local, and national leaders to come off of the stage. And we do not want the media to forget about the poor. We have the resources, the power, and the intellect to change the trajectory of America as it relates to this topic. We know where the problems lie. We know where the resources are needed. The question is, to what extent do we possess the political will to act on what we know.
Hey, it's Denzel Valentine with the Chicago Bulls, and it's important that you get counted in the 2020 census.
What's up, y'all? This your boy Twister right here. And don't get it twisted. I need y'all to stand up and be counted for the 2020 census. Chicago Coalition. You know what it is. Stand up and be counted.
When I think of Rainbow Push, I think of two words: social justice.
Education advocacy.
Political empowerment.
Freedom and equality.
Global humanitarian.
Evolutionary, revolutionary.
Political change.
Inclusion, evolution. Push Excel.
Progress, justice.
Jesse Jackson.
Love divisiveness. Equality and perseverance.
Corporate partnership.
People united.
Push yes.
I'm Otis Moss III.
I'm Frederick Douglass Haynes III.
And we are here simply just to say to you about an incredible organization known as Operation Push.
Can I be admitted? No, sir, you cannot be admitted. Why? I am not going to serve you. Because of my race?
Operation Push has been here for us even when we didn't know it. As a matter of fact, a lot of the doors that you walk through is because of the fact that somebody knocked those doors down.
I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
And because of Operation Push, when it started as Operation Breadbasket, after the assassination of Dr. King, they decided to build an organization that were people united to save humanity.
Just what is Operation Push? Well, Operation Push is a civil economics organization. It's a religious organization with an economic mission. And we believe that the black church is the political and spiritual salvation of our people. And it is to that extent that we challenge churches and churchmen to get involved.
And so we are simply asking those who have been blessed by Push to join the movement.
That's right. And if you do that, I promise you, you are blessing the next generation. And that's what we need, generationally, to bless those who come behind us, just as those before us made sure that we could have what we have. That's Operation Push, pushing doors open. But we can't push if we don't have your hand involved.
We want to turn on the gas. We want to turn on the water. We want to sell the clothes. We want to sell the cars. We want to be men. We want self-determination.
And it was Jesse Jackson who was the young man of the movement and now is an elder statesman. And we've got to make sure that we have another generation that will be pushing forward, another generation that will be building an Operation Breadbasket, another generation that will be talking about new economic strategies for those who are poor.
And ensuring that we are never politically disenfranchised. I hope you already recognize that there is a movement afoot to rob us of what we fought so hard for and shed blood for, and that is the right to express our voice through voting.
If blacks vote in great numbers, progressive whites win. It's the only way progressive whites win. If blacks vote in great numbers, Hispanics win. When blacks, Hispanics, and progressive whites vote, women win. When women win, children win. When women and children win, workers win. We must all come up together. We must come up together.
We need you in Rainbow Push to make sure we are politically empowered and enfranchised.
There is no other organization like Rainbow Push, and we encourage you to make sure that you join and financially support. If we don't support it, no other organization will. It is our duty, it is our job to support our organizations.
We got to do it. Grassroots organization, hitting the streets and challenging those in the suites. That's Operation Push.
I like that. I'm Reverend Otis Moss III.
Hey, I'm Frederick D. Haynes III. He's rubbing off on me.
Make sure you join Operation Push, Rainbow Push, today.
Keep hope alive.
We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to pound 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition.
Hi, I'm Todd Yeary here outside Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push headquarters, where people of goodwill from all walks and all places gather as comrades in the movement for justice and equality. Social justice movements have been birthed in the imaginations of people in places just like this. You can be a part of this justice movement too. Join Rainbow Push as we fight for justice in the 21st century. Go to rainbowpush.org or dial 773-FREEDOM and remember, keep hope alive.
I've been challenged with the seventh word tonight. It comes from Luke chapter 23, verse 46. And when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, he said, Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. And having said thus, he gave up the ghost. I want to talk today from this thought this evening. Sing yourself through this. Sing yourself through this. I can recall with great clarity spending time in my grandma Sharp's modest home there in Decatur, Georgia. As a little boy, I would hear her standing over the stove singing. And what was so amazing now in hindsight is that she wasn't rich. She never finished college. She wasn't wealthy financially. She was unfamiliar with fame and fortune. And yet she sung. She was a country girl that made it to the city, but she sung deep out of her soul, and her singing was drenched in experience, and it had the fragrance of faith. And I vividly remember her singing, Since I Met Jesus, there's been a burning, oh, such a burning deep down within. Later in the song, it says, since I met Jesus, since he blessed this old soul of mine, it makes me want to run on and shout hallelujah to the end. Tonight in our text, the Jesus my grandmother was singing about is singing, or at least quoting, his own song. Can't you hear him crying with a loud voice? Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. Many forget that Jesus in this seventh saying is quoting Psalm 31 verse 5. It is a psalm written by David, and he's requesting deliverance from his enemies and expresses his own confidence in God. Psalm 31 verse 5 says, into your hand I commit my spirit. The book of Psalms is the Jewish community's hymn book. And as our Lord dies from suffocation and asphyxiation on this cross of Calvary, the last thing on his mind and the last thing out of his mouth is a song. It's a hymn. It's a melody. Jesus teaches us that even when you're on the cross and in chaos and in a crisis and in a challenge or COVID-19 pandemic, you can sing yourself through it. There are a few things that we should know about this song that our Lord was quoting or singing on his last phrase uttered on this earth. First, it's a generational song. Jesus quotes a song that David wrote. Jesus is in trouble and quotes a song that David wrote while he was in trouble. But in Acts chapter 7 verse 59, watch this now, a fellow by the name of Stephen, who was the first deacon of the Christian church, will be stoned to death. And while they're stoning him for his indomitable faith in Jesus, Stephen quotes Jesus and says while he's dying, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. Don't miss it. Jesus quotes David's song, and then Stephen quotes Jesus's song, and this song is generational. And all of us are part of a heritage of singing. No matter what crisis, we've always had a song. We heard our grandparents singing, and we sing what they used to sing because it's generational. And we have to remember that if we stop singing, our children and our grandchildren will never know know the power of some of our songs. You see, in slavery, they used to sing, before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. In the civil rights movement, they used to sing, soon I will be done with the troubles of the world. You see, it's generational. And while some of us have updated the lyrics, the heart and the essence and the fabric of the song is still the same. It's generational. You see, your granddaddy and Kendrick Lamar are actually saying the same thing. Your granddaddy used to sing, I got a feeling that everything's going to be all right. But Kendrick Lamar said, wouldn't you know, we've been hurt. We've been down before when our pride was low, looking at the world like, where do we go? We hate po-po, want to kill us dead in the streets for sure. I'm at the preacher's door, my knees getting weak and my gun might blow. But if God got us, then we gonna be all right. It's a generational song. It's not just Jacob's song, it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because it's also a song that outlasts just one generation. It's generational, but it's not just generational, it's a conversational song. Watch it now. Jesus says, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. He's not talking or singing to anybody. He's talking to God in the midst of his cross, crucifixion, and chaos. He has a conversation with his creator. Oh, I'm getting happy. And I can't speak for you, but in the middle of crisis, challenge, and COVID-19, I've had to have some conversations with my creator. And when something goes wrong at a restaurant, sometimes I don't want to talk to the waiter. I want to talk to the manager, because if you talk to the waiter, they can hear it, but if you talk to the manager, they can fix it. And God is the heavenly manager. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. It's a conversation, and the best of our music has always been conversational. Sometimes you can't just talk about him, you got to talk to him. Great is thy faithfulness. That's a conversation. Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry. That's a conversation. Do it, Lord, for me right now. That's a conversation. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. That's a conversation. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. That's a conversation. Lord, you are good. So many doors you've opened, so many ways you've made. You've been better than good to me. Sometimes you got to talk to him in prayer, in song, or lament. How many of y'all know that just a little talk with your God can make everything all right? It's not just generational. It's not just a conversational song, but it's an inspirational song. According to the New Testament scholars, Psalm 31 verse 5 that Jesus quotes on Calvary. Watch this now. Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. Jewish families used to quote this as an evening prayer that disciples would utter right before they go to sleep. That didn't shock me, because Jesus' last words sound like a prayer my mama taught me when I was just a toddler. Didn't you learn? Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. Jesus was in the worst pain of his life, but as he was dying, he decided to sing his way back home. Jesus sung his way through it. And I remember vividly a time I drove to Howard University because Morehouse College and Howard were playing, and on my way back home, all of my friends went to sleep. We were an hour outside of Atlanta, and all of them were asleep. Ain't that trifling? They left me up late at night driving back, trying to stay up, and they were asleep. And I had to let down the window, get some air on my face, and I blasted Total Praise with Richard Smallwood. And what I had to do was sing my way back home. Hey, it's a lot going on, and we all in a global pandemic, but I challenge you to sing yourself through it. Maybe you can sing, I've had some good days, and I've had some bad days, and I've had some hills to climb. I've had some weary days, and I've had some sleepless nights. But when I look around and think things over, all my good days still outweigh my bad days. So I won't complain. Maybe you can sing Trouble in My Way. I have to cry sometimes. Maybe you can sing My God is Awesome. Maybe you can sing Let Go and Let God. But I know for sure that I'm going to sing Be Not Dismayed, whatever betides you, because God will take care of you. Beneath his wings of love abide. God will take care of you. I'm done, but I got a couple questions. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart feel lonely and long for heaven and home when Jesus is my portion? A constant friend is he. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me. I sing because I'm happy. I'm done now. I sing because I'm free. His eye is on the sparrow, and no matter what we're going through, I know he watches over me. Tell somebody in your house, sing yourself through it. Sing yourself through it, because after a while, weeping may endure for a night, but joy is coming in the morning. Say yes, say yes.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to pound 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, trying to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join the movement. Join Rainbow Push.